Hello and welcome to the IndyCar Red Pill, the show where we're going to talk about IndyCar racing, no punches pulled, and no filter. I'm recording this at stupid o'clock in the morning because IndyCar had this race, the Desert Diamond Grand Prix at Phoenix. Don't know why they're calling it Grand Prix when it's on an oval, but anyway, naming rights aside, yeah, this race kind of was late, being as it is a night race, but pretty interesting race. Some people called it boring. Not sure it was boring, and I'm going to explain why I don't think it really was a boring race. Certainly less boring than last year's Desert Diamond Grand Prix. But I think there's a lot to talk about, and the first thing to talk about is that track record that fell once again to Helio Castroneves. This time he raised the track record, or lowered it if you're talking about lap time, to 195 miles per hour. Actually 194.98 something. It was a heck of a number, almost to 200 mile an hour, and it's amazing that we're approaching the magic 200 mile per hour barrier on 1 mile ovals. A crazy time to be alive. However, with the aero kits going away for next year and a lot of the downforce that comes with the kits, I think we're going to see Helio's track record stand for a very long time. I don't think the 2018 car, as pretty as it looks, is going to be nearly as fast as these DW12s with the Honda and Chevrolet aero kits on them. So again, I think this track record set by Helio is going to stand for a very long time. Quick complaint about the race weekend as a whole, and no, it doesn't have to do with the on-track product. It has to do with the fact that this weekend was a 2-day race weekend, and what that means is practice and qualifying were consigned to one day, the Friday, and then the race day was on Saturday. Now, the reason I have a problem with this is because it really felt Bush League, and I'll explain why. Online, they had to stream qualifying and practice online when last year, when I think it was a 3-day event, they were able to show practice and qualifying live on NBC Sports. This year, qualifying was a taped segment before the actual race on NBC Sports. So seeing or losing 2 days of TV coverage in exchange for a little bit of cost savings for the team, I don't think is really justified, and it certainly felt very Bush League watching the qualifying online with in the middle of the night. It was just a really strange thing. Just a little pet peeve before we start talking about the race. So Helio was on the pole, and you know what that means. He has 2 speeds, as we found out at Long Beach, but this time he brought his jump start speed to Phoenix, and I have to say, when I saw the start happening coming out of turn number 4 with the field very, very straggled out behind about maybe the 6th or 7th row, I was screaming at the TV, "You got to wave this off. It's going to be ugly." And it turns out it was ugly.
Side by side, Pagano making a move.
Oh, they go in turn 1. Hard contact into the wall.
Michaela Lotion loses it down low. Mark
they're piling into him.
Michaela Lotion, the Mad Russian, the guy who's endeared himself to a lot of us IndyCar fans with his crazy driving style, his no fear on the ovals, unfortunately was a little too fearless in turn number 1 and loses control and takes a whole bunch of cars with him because there was a big 4-wide battle behind him with Sebastian Bourdais, Marco Andretti, Ryan Hunter-Reay, and I think James Hinchcliffe was the other one in there, and took out Bourdais, unfortunately the championship leader, as well as Marco Andretti, who continues not to be able to catch a break, and Ryan Hunter-Reay just squeaked by. And then as the pileup continued, you had a few other guys getting in there like Max Chilton, and then very late coming in was Graham Rahal, as Chilton kind of maybe should have held the brakes while he was down on the apron, rather than just let the car spin out and slide back up onto the track, which ended up taking Rahal as well and absolutely slamming Marco Andretti. So a 5-car big, I guess we could say It's the big one. It's the big one at Phoenix. My God, the big one at Phoenix. But it really was the big one. That's the biggest crash I've seen maybe ever at Phoenix. I know there was a couple in the 90s during the IRL days. There was one where Ari Leindyke got upside down on the back straightaway, but that's the biggest crash I've seen on a 1 mile oval in a very long time from Indy cars. So after like the longest cleanup ever, because when you explode 5 Indy cars, it takes a while to clean up all the debris. I know people complain about the debris, but I think the amount of debris that was generated from this pileup was probably justified, and the cleanup was justified. So we finally get back to racing like 20 laps into the race, and it's a battle between Elio Castroneves and Joseph Newgarden, but it gets a little ugly as Newgarden tries to make the pass heading into turn number 3. They make a little bit of contact, and Newgarden breaks his wing. Now, nobody noticed this until the first pit stop, including Team Penske and NBC Sports, but this severely hampered Newgarden's charge, and you have to wonder if Newgarden hadn't had that wing break, that he would have been maybe the dominant car all day long. He seemed to have a very strong car when it was working properly and had a front wing. It just wasn't working properly and had a front wing very much of the day. So I guess we'll talk about this right off the bat, and I have to say, once the field kind of spread out, it definitely turned into a bit of a slot car race, meaning the cars are so planted to the ground with downforce, it was very hard for people to be able to set up moves, be able to pass, because virtually every car that was still running after the big wreck was running about the same speed, lap time and lap speed wise. So you really just had pretty much a parade at Phoenix. Now I think that's a lot of people blame the aero kits for that. I think that's partially to blame. I don't think it's 100% to blame. When you have leaders who take a big-time lead, like you saw with Team Penske, especially when they're teammates, early on in the race, you're going to see them save fuel. Now, the guys behind are not going to save so much fuel, so you've got guys who are capable of running about 5 miles per hour faster than they are currently running, and guys who are running at their maximum terminal velocity. So you're not going to see a lot of discrepancy between the field on those first couple of stints at a 1 mile oval. But obviously, yes, you're right. When you out there say, yes, the aero kits are to blame for the racing product you see at Phoenix. But it's more, I would say, the aero kit choice by IndyCar, or what parts of the aero kit they allowed the teams to use at Phoenix versus the teams that the parts the teams actually brought. I think if IndyCar had banned what are essentially the road course front and rear wings and forced the teams to run their Texas or Pocono setups, I think you would have seen a lot more discrepancy between the speeds of the fast guys and the speeds of the slow guys, because obviously you take away that downforce, you put a little bit more of the race into the driver's hands. And I think I know a lot of people point out the kart races in the 90s when they tried super speedway wings at short ovals and it didn't work. I think the DW12s nowadays, especially in the aero kit era, produce enough downforce on their short oval configuration or super speedway configurations that they would be able to handle the reconfigure of Phoenix, which has higher banking than the old version, pretty easily. So that would have been my solution, along with road course boost. So yes, I'm kind of in the same boat as Will Power, though I don't think this race was a bad show. And one of the people who helped it be a really pretty exciting race was a guy by the name of J.R. Hildebrand. And as if NBC Sports didn't tell you enough, surprise, J.R. Hildebrand had a broken left hand. Now, JR, I think, drove an absolutely fantastic race. He was passing cars left, right, and center, especially in the traffic. His car was probably the best throughout the traffic. He was able to pass a lot of the Hondas when his pit crew kind of lost him some spots on pit road, and got right back up there on the Penske's, was able to pass Newgarden, and also able to fight up there with Power and Castroneves, as well as Simon Pagenaud. He was really competitive today, and it was great to see JR finally have a real competitive drive. And those 5 cars, the 4 Penske cars and Hildebrand, were really the class of the field. As we saw in qualifying, you saw those 5 Chevrolet cars along with the gigantic group of Hondas in the middle of the field, and then the Foyt cars and Carpenter at the bottom. Those 5 Chevrolets were absolutely the class of the field, as we kind of expected them to be. No real surprise there. But it would take a pretty crazy sequence of events to actually determine which of those 5 drivers was going to win the Desert Diamond Grand Prix. It all kicked off when Alexander Rossi hit the wall in turn 4, just like he did last year. No caution though. So that was a good call on IndyCar's part. When a guy brushes the wall and there's no debris and he can get it safely into the pits, no reason to call a yellow there. However, there was a reason to call the yellow when Takuma Sato did the exact same thing in the same spot on the track and absolutely destroyed his number 26 Panasonic Andretti Honda, and kind of a dangerous situation where the car actually jinked across the straightaway. Thankfully, nobody T-boned him and he would be all right, but the yellow would come out, and the reason that is significant is because it would happen in the middle of a pit sequence where every car in the field had pitted except for that number 1 yellow, bright yellow, chartreuse yellow, as Bobby Unser would say, Menard's Chevrolet of Simon Pagenaud. So what that did was, as Pagenaud was able to pit under the yellow, for a little while he was actually on a lap of his own. Now, obviously, since this isn't 1999 and we have the wave around rule now, everybody meaning the other 4 Chevrolets that he was racing, got back on the lead lap. So when we got the restart, we got some absolutely vintage Phoenix racing. You saw the 4 Chevrolets that were sitting in the back of the pack able to slice and dice through lap traffic. I mean, that was some old school Phoenix. If you watch one of the races from the 90s or the 80s, that was kind of par for the course racing at Phoenix. You have the few fast guys in the field just slicing and dicing, making moves, passing each other through lap traffic. I thought it was really good stuff. It was way more compelling than anything we saw last year, and it's one of those things where it's one of those moments I'll point to and say, when people say, it was a boring race, I have a hard time saying it was a boring race just looking at that sequence as you saw the battle, the intense battling through the lap traffic. It's something I absolutely love about this short oval racing in Indy cars. I wish we'd bring back Milwaukee. I wish we could resurrect Nazareth, because these are the kind of races that I think you really see the cars and drivers of the Verizon IndyCar Series shine. It's like the perfect mix of road course and super speedway, because you have the slowing down, the tight confines that you would see on a road course, along with the speed of a super speedway. I absolutely love short oval racing, and that little sequence on the restart where you saw J.R. Hildebrand slicing through the lap cars to try to catch Willie P. and Elio, I think that was just fantastic racing. Speaking of J.R. Hildebrand, he makes the move of the race when Ryan Hunter-Reay, the fourth Andretti car, all 4 Andretti cars smack the wall. So RHR smacks the wall, then gets chopped by Dixon going into turn number 3, and Joseph Newgarden actually makes contact with the rear end of Ryan Hunter-Reay's car, which slows down both Newgarden and Elio to allow J.R. Hildebrand to slice underneath both of them. A fantastic move, honestly my move of the race, and move up into a podium position. And that would set up a fantastic fight between Will Power and J.R. Hildebrand in the lap traffic, fighting for the second place position. I think that was another great battle. I'm kind of disappointed that race control told the lap cars to get out of the way. It was kind of one of those things where in my mind I was getting the rigged, it's so rigged. Because it kind of felt like one of those race control calls where they said, oh, a Penske car is getting held up by lap traffic, better tell them to move over. But then again, I guess the like one of the founding members or the Holman George family has a pretty high stake in that Fuzzy's vodka car, and they're the ones who own the whole enchilada. So I guess if they're gonna rig it against somebody, they probably aren't gonna rig it against themselves. Never mind. I'm gonna take off my Trump hair there and rescind that rigging accusation, because you know what? Maybe they didn't, but it was still, you know what? Just let them race. If the lap cars want to get out of the way, let them, but don't force the lap cars to get out of the way. That's just artificial. but it would be Simon Pagenaud. He loves crepes, and he also loves taking victories. His first oval victory, and it would come at maybe one of the toughest tracks oval-wise on the circuit, the 200-mile-an-hour Phoenix International Raceway. It's crazy to think that Pagenaud's been in the sport for so long, has a championship to his name, and didn't have that oval win until now. And that's going to be one of those interesting things heading into the Indianapolis 500. Can he carry that momentum and confidence into the month of May by winning at Phoenix? We've seen it in the past where drivers who do well at Phoenix tend to do well at Indianapolis. Now, it doesn't always work out that way, but you look at guys like Roberto Guerrero. In 1987, he won the Phoenix race from the back of the field, went on to finish second. You look at Buddy Lazier in 2000, again, another guy who won from the back of Phoenix, finished second at Indianapolis. Now, Pagenaud didn't win from the back, but I think Phoenix isn't a terrible barometer for how you can do at Indianapolis, so it'll be interesting to see, again, if he can take that confidence from having that breakthrough oval win to Indianapolis with a Penske car. I think it's going to be very interesting to see how that all turns out. But even though Pagenaud wins, I have to give driver of the day to J.R. Hildebrand. To not sound like a broken record or the pit reporters for NBC Sports, yes, he did achieve a podium finish with a broken hand. Not quite as impressive as Newgarden's broken collarbone victory on the short oval at Iowa last year, but still, nonetheless, I think JR drove an absolutely fantastic race. The car was very much probably the strongest over the entire race of anybody out there. I think JR is another guy who's very good at the Grand Prix of Indianapolis, actually. He was running in the top 5 in 2015 when he ran the GP of Indy, and obviously he's very strong at the Indianapolis 500. I mean, we don't need to bring up 2011 again, but a lot of people bring that up as a joke, but let's face it, the guy was one turn away from winning the Indianapolis 500. He was strong last year as well. Everybody, again, brings up another mistake in that he knocked Elio's bumper off, but I think Hildebrand was making some huge moves last year in the late going of the 500, and once again we could see him running up at the front. I mean, there's no reason not to expect it. The only thing that you could maybe worry about is the fact that he's got the Chevrolet, and the Chevrolet is maybe a little bit more difficult on the super speedways, maybe a little bit more draggy. So we'll have to see whether or not Chevy can kind of get it together, get some more horsepower for the Indianapolis 500. I think it's going to be an absolutely fantastic and exciting month of May. Speaking of the month of May, you guys who love the IndyCar Red Pill are going to love the month of May here on this channel. I am going to be doing Indy 500 month, which I do every single year, but this year is going to be the biggest Indy 500 month of all time. Hopefully, weather permitting, I will be filming the Fernando Alonso test at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. I'll also hopefully be doing these IndyCar Red Pills for the races during the month of May. I'll be doing the Bandwagoners Guides for the GP of Indy, the Indianapolis 500, and the Firestone Indy Lights Freedom 100. I'm also going to be doing, I've already done actually, they're uploaded and ready to go, some history videos on McLaren and Honda at the Indianapolis 500. I've also got the gaming videos coming up with Indy 500 Evolution and IndyCar 2005. So we've just got a huge month coming down the pipeline for Indy 500 month, and I couldn't be more excited. So if you haven't subscribed already, what on earth are you doing this far in the video? Those of you who have made it this far, thank you guys so much for watching. It's going to be a very busy month for me, but a very exciting month coming up in the month of May. So while you're down there in the comments, leave me a prediction for what you're thinking is going to happen in the month of May, and let me know what you think of the Phoenix race. I think it was a pretty good race. It was certainly better than last year, and like I think you heard a lot of the drivers say, I think when they reduce the downforce next year, we're going to see lower speeds, but we're probably going to see a better show. So thank you guys so much for watching. This has been David Land on YouTube for the IndyCar Red Pill, and we'll see you in the next video.